Christian.
Quentin.
I'm Josh.
And with us tonight we have Nick, Elena, Autumn, and our good friend Taylor here as well. He's not yet with us in college. And our tech guy tonight is Travis.
Shout out to that guy right there.
All right, so we're just going to go ahead and dive in, I suppose. We're going to start with something that's kind of interesting. Call of Duty, particularly how the campaigns and what kind of messages they send and what they kind of reflect on in relation to what society's general messages about the horrors of war and how they're kind of portraying it and what's wrong about it, what's right about it. So before we get started, any thoughts, or should I start?
I think wrong and right is a bit weird a way to paint it because war is gray. I don't think there is a wrong or right when it comes to that kind of thing. And I think that's Call of Duty's fault, is painting it as a wrong or a right. The Russians are always, the Russians in the first Modern Warfare were the bad guys. Now, there was a bad protagonist that did bad things, but I do not think any of the factions' actions as a whole particularly portrayed them as such. It's just kind of a propagated one-sided thing because you are from the perspective of an American, and from a narrative sense that does make sense and that does work, but from a thematic sense and from a kind of a beyond a storytelling sense, from an ethical sense, it doesn't make much cohesive sense at all.
Yeah, thank you, Taylor. Yeah, I think that's accurate because he's right. Because when it comes to everything, it all is perspective and gray area. Almost everything is. So we have our baseline for the entire discussion. Now, would you agree, based on his statement there, that because they try and portray it a certain way, they're already doing it wrong?
Well, if I can add a point, like,
When?
obviously, like, if you ever actually played Modern Warfare, you realize that the main antagonist of the game is, I said antagonist, right? Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, I was making sure. I can be stupid sometimes. The main antagonist, obviously, is Makarov, and his nationality is Russian, and his idea was plant different nationalities in these situations to where it starts out an all-out world war like he does in Modern Warfare 2, whereas you're playing as an American undercover CIA agent. Exactly. And you're playing in a Russian mission. And it's not necessarily like, honestly, in my opinion, like, honestly, the reactions of what they're portraying as, like, the Russians in the games and everything is completely understandable if you think about it, because it's like, oh, an American just slaughtered all these people in a Russian airport. Of course the Russians are going to want to take up arms against America. I mean, it's completely understandable.
Yep. Zakhaev was the original antagonist of Call of Duty 4.
Right. I forgot about that.
Makarov was one of his acolytes, and that's an important thing to note.
He's basically a right-hand man, correct?
Right-hand man, and with Zakhaev's death, he went nuts, particularly against Captain Price, and Soap. But Soap wasn't as big of a deal. Gotta love McTavish. But since the Americans were involved in that last mission at the same time, they factor in. And the general point of that is Makarov, I admit to his genius. He managed to manipulate two major world powers into war, essentially single-handedly. He picked up the narc, which would be Joseph Allen, I would guess immediately.
Probably.
And planned that from the start.
Yeah.
So it was very, very ingenious and very well done.
I think
Taylor?
Well,
Has anyone ever noticed the Sherlock Holmes vibe that was always in the Call of Duty games when it came to their antagonist, protagonist, kind of, not necessarily stereotypes, but archetypes? I know maybe you guys have not read the Game of Shadows kind of story from the original Sherlock Holmes books, maybe, but have y'all seen the movie? J.J. Abrams, y'all familiar with it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, in that movie, you have this manufacturer manipulating the entire world into a world war. That kind of ties back into the Call of Duty, just Modern Warfare idea. And it's good to note that the storyboard director for Modern Warfare was a huge Sherlock Holmes nut. I think it's important kind of in games to look really at who made the game, not necessarily the game itself. And as far as a narrative standpoint, back to the original, kind of looking back to the original topic, Call of Duty, as an American soldier, it's okay for you to have that stilted view. That's fine. But I think the Modern Warfare, the first game, it would have succeeded better and on a better level if there was at least one mission where you got to see a Russian perspective with an American offensive bias, as opposed to always American with a Russian defensive sacrifice. Like maybe, and it didn't even have to be someone that was part of the Russian regime. It just had to be like personal defense service or something. Their equivalent of like the CIA, their modern KGB, whatever they had to be like, holy cow, an American just shot up the place. What just happened? And from just a normal Russian soldier standpoint, not from Makarov's entourage, just soldier to soldier.
Well, if you don't mind me expanding on that, like, I also noticed that we're talking a lot about Modern Warfare here.
Specifically Modern Warfare 2.
Exactly.
3 or Black Ops or World of War.
If you even look at it, like, technically, didn't we start off saying we were going to talk about Call of Duty as a franchise? I was going to say, it's only in the...
In the story. We're thinking of the story.
I was going to say,
surface level.
It's only in the Modern Warfare series is that you don't actually play from the perspective of the Russian. Oh, in the Black Ops games, of course. Black Ops 2. Those are the only two of the franchise that you do not actually play as a Russian. So we can't just say the entire series has nothing to do with Russians, obviously, because in World at War, there's an entire half of the storyline is you're playing as a Russian.
But they're not. In World War II, the Russians weren't the enemy. Well, they weren't the enemy yet.
Okay.
Because the enemy was the Japanese.
The Japanese and the
and
Nazis.
The Nazis.
Right.
So they still weren't showing the enemy's perspective, but at the same time, you can't really get around that because trying to show both sides of the war is difficult at best.
Yeah, because
now, as a writer, I can say that it's possible, and if you do it well, it's very powerful.
Right.
But we're talking AAA titles here. You're not expecting anything good story-wise.
All right. One thing I've got to add in is, I think it could have been accomplished if they had decided when they made Black Ops, when they made Modern Warfare, if they had decided to split it up where one game you're following one half of the war and one game you're following the other half of the war, you would have seen both sides very well, and you would have gotten a holistic picture. As it is, you're playing, one character for so much time because they are trying to give you a sense of both sides. You're getting that ethnocentrism of both sides for a little bit, but you stick mainly generally to one. You don't spend quite as much time on the other side. And I haven't played through all of the campaigns myself. I've only played through, I guess, Black Ops, and I've watched the playthrough, I think, of one or two of the other ones, but I haven't done it myself. But from what I've seen, they do a very good job of showing you the idea that would have been there for the home countries. It's very much, this is what we're seeing. It's just that you're missing the other side. And because of where we are now, we're sitting there and we're looking for, okay, but what's the entire picture? Because we played through and we've seen what's actually happening. And we're going, okay, so what am I missing? But, anyway.
Something else is, we're kind of still touching on this, particularly for World War II. This is a little bit separate from the Call of Duty thing.
Right.
Now, one of my favorite bands is Swedish metal group called Sabaton. They have this one song, I forget the name, I think it's Wehrmacht, War Machine.
Yeah.
And one of the main themes of the song is basically, well, what about the men executing the orders? Talking about the Nazi regime. Like, were they just young men who were manipulated and lost their way, or were they just as monstrous as the leadership? And to a degree, you have to agree, like, well, some of them were obviously manipulated. But there were obviously the people at the ground level executing the orders, for instance, in Auschwitz. You don't have to be ignorant and manipulated to know that setting somebody into a furnace to burn them to death is cruel. So you kind of have to evaluate that. And that's not necessarily just a Nazi thing, that's a period. That ties into the ethnocentrism thing again. And by the way, for those of you listening that don't understand the concept or the word ethnocentrism, it's basically my ethnicity, American in our case.
Right.
We have this natural proclivity towards looking down on other societies. Maybe not even necessarily looking down, but thinking, well, those British, with the way they handle themselves, they're still pretty cool, but the way we do things is still better.
Right.
That's ethnocentrism. At the better side of things. The worst side of things, especially in the early 1900s, as we're covering in our cultural anthropology class,
Right.
is they didn't think about it. They're just like, well, if they're about the impact they had on changing their lives, the diseases they brought, etc. What's that?
Head.
Okay, so what were you about to say, Taylor?
Well, I will agree and elaborate a little bit more on the morality of what was happening to Germans. Were they manipulated? Yes, to an extent, but unless you have antisocial personality disorder or sociopath, unless you are a sociopath and have no sense of conscience, your sense of morality in an innate sense is a very human, modernly described, or at least in modern psychology, described as either a feeling or an intangible sense, like it's a direction. That's why it's described as a compass. It's kind of like your sexuality. You know, when it becomes real, are you straight or are you gay or are you bi or whatever you are? When it comes real and you're aiming a gun at some guy that doesn't deserve to die, do you have that conscience? Do you have that thing that automatically says no, or don't you? And really, it comes down to if 1 in 24 Americans, according to the sociopath next door, don't, or 1 in 25 don't have that conscience, then that only accounts for 1 over 25. That does not, that's like 4% of the population. That doesn't count for the other 96. So what's the other 96's excuse?
Well, and there's still another question here, and that's kind of on a personal level. If we're talking about individual basis, murder kind of thing, that's one thing. Something else we have to consider is how does the dynamic of the concept of war alter perspective? Because people who, soldiers for instance, that in their society, wouldn't think for a second about going and killing somebody because they did something wrong or they broke the law. But then they get into war, and someone might not even have broken the law because they're at war with somebody. They don't even think twice; they just shoot. It's because it's kill or be killed in war. So it's less a matter of sociopathic tendencies and worrying about, well, what happens, what do you do here, and more, okay, either I kill him or he kills me. I think a lot of the morality gets thrown out the door or the window at that point, just because it's not about, is this wrong? It's a matter, it doesn't matter. I have to survive.
Well, with the Nazi regime, you have to think on a micro level, it was a person-to-person basis. Every person had their own thing. And then moving forward, that goes into a macro level. If everyone had this thing, then how did everyone go wrong with it? And then back to...
I'm not following, actually.
So imagine this. So if 96% of Americans have a conscience, let's just pretend for a moment that applies to Germans, and we'll put that model under German people. Now, 96% of them would have a conscience. So why would 96% of them not stand up? The 1% or the 4% can't control the 96. They can sway, but not necessarily control.
Alright, so weighing in here. One thing that I noticed is the fact that when we look at this, especially when we look at World War II and Hitler, what we see is there was a power vacuum. And with that power vacuum, Hitler steps up and he says, we have all of these problems. And then he says, we have all of these problems and our country is starting to fall apart. We're having a lot of trouble after the World War I agreements. And
The Treaty of Versailles, correct?
yes.
Treaty of Versailles, yeah.
And it really did shaft the Germans. Let's be honest.
It was
Yes.
terrible.
It was horrible for them. Not even close to a fair end of war treaty. Continue later.
And so they're having this terrible time. And so Hitler steps up and he starts off as a very charismatic, very good leader. He's amazing.
He was an amazing politician.
Yes.
He was still a great leader and public speaker and motivation person. For what he did, no one could have done it better.
That's why they say, if you don't mind me interrupting, that's why they say, like, honestly, if it weren't for all the crimes that he, the crimes that he convinced others to commit and all the crimes that he committed, he honestly is one of the greatest leaders of all time, honestly.
Well, what defines a leader? You have to ask that, because taking away the crimes, keep in mind, history is determined by the victor. What if he won? Then he would be one of the, if not the greatest leader of all time.
Exactly.
And the same thing is that you can apply that to any of the Caesars that succeeded in war. Alexander the Great, Napoleon. I mean, they were fantastic leaders. They were charismatic. Some of them were tactical geniuses.
Well,
Hitler was not. Hitler lost the war because he decided he wanted to be a general, and by the way, he flunked out of military school.
Oh, yeah.
He did well with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But back to what I was saying anyway. What we see is Hitler steps into the power and he says that, okay, we have this problem. Well, here's an answer to our problem. The Jews have all of this money. They're inside of our borders. And if we take their money and we push them out, we can fix the problem. And that's how he started it.
But the thing, like you were saying, if you don't mind me interrupting again,
No, you're fine.
like you were saying, like that's all most of the German citizens, that's all they thought what was going on, is that, oh, they're just going to take the Jews and push them out of the country. Unfortunately, if you, like, over half of the population of Germany had no idea about what was actually going on with the Jewish community, about all the concentration camps and everything. So.
Yeah, and so this is how he introduces it. And he integrates it extremely well. They don't understand. And then the next thing he does is he separates the youth. And when he separates the youth, he starts to indoctrinate them. And he introduces the idea of your home country is always right. Your leader is always right.
Fascist.
It really is.
That's like the thing. It's like if you start young, because the next I can't even know what I'm trying to say here.
Next generation.
The next generation is our future, and
Yes.
if you raise them up on that mentality, then obviously they're going to be so easy to manipulate, because
Which is why, even now, applying here in America, I think it's dangerous to give so much of the child rearing power to not necessarily the government, but to any entity, whether it's a private school or the government.
Right.
Period.
Anyone.
The fact is, the primary people responsible for raising and rearing the child has to be the parents and the family. They come first. But as the tendency is growing, they're trying to extend school all year long, make it go longer. And the tendency is towards, well, the parents, they go to work and provide for their kids, but they don't raise them. I think that's dangerous.
Yeah.
Because you run into potential situations like the Hitler.
Right. And so with the youth that Hitler begins to raise up, you see almost a programming of how your mind is supposed to work. And so you get that sociopathic tendency, you get those psychopathic tendencies, and you start to breed them in. Where they may not have originally existed, you start corrupting the moral compass.
right.
And so once that compass is honestly corrupted, because that's what
You
happens.
can't honestly corrupt a sense of the human mind. The conscience has been proven to be an unconscious, and that by that I mean underlying or subconscious sense of the human mind. You will always have an innate morality unless you are literally born without it. Just like how
Well,
sexuality is not
here's the
straight.
thing, though. Morality is a learned behavior. We're coming down to the border between anthropology
Is
and
it
psychology.
Is it
Is-
morality or is it conscience? Now what?
Now, here's the thing: conscience and morality, both of which are entirely societally defined.
Not conscience.
They are conscience. I don't see how it can't be, because what is right or wrong? Well, you learn right or wrong from, well, no, it's wrong to hit me. Someone told you that. Now, you might feel bad about hitting somebody you care about, but a perfect example of this is today we don't have human sacrifices in any civilized country anywhere. And in fact, we have very few human sacrifices, period. If they're happening, they're happening deep in the Amazon, no one knows about it. But go back 750, even as little as that, and there's still human sacrifices all over the place, and it was not a problem. Now, people that were considered civilized would have seen this and been horrified. In quotes, civilized. We're still quotes civilized. Going into anthropology, there is no civilized. That's a bad term.
There's an organized chaos.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
it's civilization's a very bad word for anthropology. But the Germans, I'm talking ancient Germans, not Nazi Germans. We're
Right.
talking Germanic tribes.
Yeah.
They did ritualistic, regular human sacrifices. There were, in their mind, there was nothing wrong. Whether it was war prisoners or of their own, they did not care. It did not matter. It was just part of their religion, and it was almost more people if they were chosen for sacrifice. Yeah, they didn't want to die, but it wasn't just the same horror. It was on an individual basis that it frightened them. It wasn't like this massive outcry of everyone going, "No, you can't do that," which is what you run into today. So
Well, that's because
in their time, it was not immoral for them.
It wasn't immoral, but what I'm saying is that's because the moral shift changed change. Their conscience did not change. They had a sense of what their culture believed was right and what would benefit the majority. They honestly believed that those sacrifices would benefit the majority. Aryan master race thought that that was the majority. That was the root out all the imperfection. That's what they thought would honestly fix the world, or at least that's what Hitler thought would fix the world. There is that sense of kind of work for the majority so that we can survive. That is the conscience. The morality can twist it all they want, but that bracket is there regardless of where you are, what you are, as long as you are a human being. Now, going back to
I will say that all humans have morality, conscience, situation, but where it defines as right or wrong is societally set.
that's the morality and the conscience, the ability.
No, you're getting into Sigmund Freud psychology, aren't you?
No, not psychoanalytic approach. It's more of a mix of a humanistic and a cognitive approach. But
See, I don't really I can't discern the difference between conscience and morality. It's kind of the same thing in my mind. So, for the purpose of the podcast, I need you to, and for my own understanding, to clearly separate the definitions here. What is the actual difference?
Well,
You kind of touched on it, I'm not really sure.
Sigmund Freud came back to everything is sex or death. Everything that you do comes back to either sex or death. And the beautiful thing about Freud is you can't prove him wrong, but you can't prove him right.
Hang on. I think Josh had something here.
Josh,
I hate to interrupt, but I'm gonna have to go ahead and leave. So I'm just gonna.
All right.
Okay.
Goodbye to
So
Josh,
will
everyone.
contribute tonight, so
Goodbye, Josh.
Goodbye, Josh.
Bye, Josh.
Goodbye,
told me
Josh.
to.
It's okay. You can contribute next time.
All right.
You go to Autumn?
He's
Yeah.
like obviously all of it, or if I may throw this
All
real,
right, you
this is
sleep well.
random thing I'm throwing in here real quick. Obviously,
Segues are weird.
yeah, segues. What's the deal with segues? No,
Yeah.
something fine. Anyway, okay, obviously
Chaos.
obviously yes, Josh is gonna be part of our main, or
Yes.
Josh is one of the main hosts of the podcast here, so that's the reason why because obviously if he wasn't really that important, he probably would just be able to leave and no one would honestly notice. Anyway, that's not what I'm getting at. Anyway,
It hasn't said anything
You
yet.
have to
Yeah.
make sure the listeners know.
Nick,
that you
say
are-
something. You're here. Participate.
Yeah. What do I need?
Well, how about yeah, that's good enough.
Well,
Bring
How
down your
about
voice.
how about
most of this
how about
stuff,
while we're on?
I haven't been in depth with it. Not in depth about any
Right.
of this. It's like the Call of Duty or War or
Yeah.
psychology. Like I've taken one psychology class and that was the second movie class.
Oh yeah, I can
So
understand.
I mean,
Okay.
we didn't go in depth about
Okay, so
certain psychology.
Okay.
Going back to the actual approach that we took earlier, going way back, kind of branching back to the original topic, it's hard from a narrative sense to get an unbiased perspective, and there are a few examples that I know that have.
Keep continuing.
There are a few examples I know that have done it right. One of them being in Full Metal Alchemist, the Ishmael Ward. The only way they pulled it off
Oh,
was through
yeah.
flashback. They did it through
Right.
Riza's eyes, they did it through the Fuhrer's eyes, they did it through Envy's eyes, and you slowly got this picture. You can't do that successfully in a first-person shooter without doing something from a Black Ops perspective, which I think they capitalized on to do exactly what they wanted to do. They didn't capitalize on
wait,
it in
are
every
you actually talking about Call of Duty Black Ops? Like
Well,
those
something
two?
to consider about Call of Duty in the campaigns in particular is
Yeah, now that
they
we're
try
finally getting back to the
we're
actual original
yeah,
topic.
Well,
Yeah.
that's the whole point of the podcast. We just go from the original topic, and that's how we're going to
You
work.
go
that
wherever
entire time. Wherever it goes, where it goes.
As long as
But
it
in
gets back to
reference to the Call of Duty campaign, we're going to be wrapping this up for the first episode with this little final thought, I think. With reference to the Call of Duty campaign, they present the only reason why they present any kind of deep meaning in their campaign at all is because it helps their ratings, it helps sell more games. Call of Duty is a AAA title from Activision. Their sole purpose is selling games. They're not trying to make a massive impression on humanity. It's just a secondary thing.
Well, I
because
mean-
having that gets them better reviews, gets more games sold. So they do have it, but they're not trying to make a deep insight.
Well, if I can actually say them, for someone who has played a lot of the Call of Duty games, I can honestly slightly disagree with you there because they have, even though it's a slight character development in the series with some of these characters, you're playing with these characters long enough that you start getting attached and you start getting emotionally attached to these characters, and then finally, once if they are killed off, you still feel that emotionally. Like you're just like, oh my god, I just lost
that
a friend.
helps them sell the game.
Exactly.
Well,
that's
That's what I'm saying. They don't care about the story. These guys are greedy corporate. Pardon it. They're greedy corporate fucks.
Well, I will
They are.
completely and utterly disagree with you. It's the marketing team to market, but it's the storyboards teams to be the storyboard teams.
exactly.
Everything that
Yes.
they design is designed to be what they want it to be. And the
Exactly.
marketing team
But
can
here's the
only-
biggest issue. This is not a marketing team thing. This is not a storyboarding team thing because I understand. I don't have this problem because I'm still an amateur writer. But even published authors that do most of their own publishing and work, their editors and their publishers go, no, that won't sell. I don't care what you want. They do this.
Can
This
I
happens
give
all the
can I
time.
give an example where that might not be the case?
Can I give
Sure.
an
The
example?
There's always a
the
contradiction.
late
There's
and
always-
great Tom Clancy.
Tom Clancy's Tom Clancy. That's
Exactly.
Not
You don't give me that shit, Christian. You
No.
just said that
fair. No.
that
okay, I
writers
just
and their
also said
editors
there's
draw a
always-
line and editors will be like, no.
That
But
is
you
always the point. Most of the time, and here's the thing: there's always an exception to the rule. You need, as you talk more with Taylor, you'll learn this. There's always an exception to the rule. If the exceptions prove,
I'm just that bitch that can find it most of the time.
yes. But my point is it's not censorship because no, we don't want that. It's because the people that are making the money off of it or that are promoting it to make the money off of it, not the marketing team, they have an impact. It's the overall development team, the people, the producers that go, hey, this is cool, we like this, but you know what? I think it would sell a lot better if we're not having these deep thoughts. So, 'cause there are some of them, but what it comes down to is, will it sell, and how well will it sell?
Right.
Have you ever been part of an animated works team of any kind, Christian? I mean, I understand writing is your
business.
medium. However, you understand the business aspect and you understand through the scope of a writer. Now, I can personally tell you that these teams work individually with very few people to check up on them on an extremely regular basis. No one's completely on their ass about the story. I mean, even in movies, let's look at
Oh, I know
Disney in
that.
their heyday. A concept art, not even a concept artist, the front cover of the Little Mermaid had a dick on it. Let's be real for a moment. They can slip anything they want, so there has to be a
they can slip it past people. But like my general point, you guys are just consistently trying to prove everything I say wrong here.
no.
No,
We're,
genuinely disagree
we're
with
not
you.
trying
no,
to.
But I'm not trying to be absolute about
It's
this.
not
What I'm
personal.
saying is, I know it's not personal. But here's the thing: I'm saying yes, there is deep meaning, and it provides a good medium for discussion. However, we're trying to find what they could have done better, and the writers knew they could have done better. But more than likely, the reason why it's not better is one of two things. They went, "That's good enough," which, as a writer, I go, "What?" So the only thing left to be the reason why they could not have had a deeper perspective is because somebody in the corporation, one of the corporate pukes, said, "Okay, that's nice," or that maybe they passed the idea around because in the end, the thumbs up or thumbs down does come from corporate. They don't know all the details. That's how they
But-
get dicks in the
But
front.
it's a first-person
You'll-
shooter. That's the drawback of being a first-person medium. Everything you do is kind of like Fallout Equestria, through the eyes of Little Pip and through the eyes of Little Pip only. There are lots of parts where she passes out. Here's things she's not supposed to. There's all kind. There are like 6 ways from Sunday. There's so many different kind of loophole ways she runs.
Yeah, plot
Well, that's all we got for now. We're
Well,
on to the last
can I add one last point about what you
Is
were
it
talking about?
30 seconds or less?
It is 30 seconds.
Let's
It is
go.
30 seconds. Okay. Obviously, you were saying, like, the corporate says, oh, okay, this is good enough, right? Well, sometimes you also have to remember that corporate wants us to leave us on a cliffhanger in most games, so that way they can keep rebooting the series and keep selling more games, more sequels, everything, right? Obviously, because we've had 3 Modern Warfares already. Obviously, anything that could have happened in Modern Warfare 1, 2, and 3 could have been probably summed up in only 2 games, maybe. Obviously. Okay, that's all I had to say about that.
Yeah, that ties back into getting more stuff than just trying to get more.
Exactly.
I love
Alright.
you, viewers.
Yes, thank you everyone for coming here and listening. That's all we have for tonight, or for this podcast. We're probably going to keep
Can I
recording
do?
another one.
Can I do the extra?
Sure, do the extra, Taylor.
Extra.
Thank you for listening to this episode of whatever the heck this thing's called, because I forgot. Like, comment, subscribe, and if you want, check out my personal channel, Purple Haze, when it goes up.
Okay.